rock and roll.
Sure thing. Then, how's it going, everybody? My name is Cyrus. This is going to sound weird for people who are on the stream right now, obviously, because you've been watching for the past 20 minutes, but ignore that if you're on YouTube. This is officially the start of a video for you guys. With me today is Drew Gulak of WWE fame, as well as other, has more wrestling accolades before that, has about, what was it, about a 15-year career? Somewhere around there.
I'm in 21 years now.
Oh, okay. I am off by a factor of a fourth.
Oh, it's all the same at some point. It just blurs together, man.
That's entirely reasonable. That all said, I wanted to bring you on today because in a weird twist of fate, you and I are both working on the same project right now.
Yeah, we're coworkers.
Which is not something that I ever thought. So for my part, I grew up not really watching wrestling all that much, but I had a bunch of friends who watched it a lot during the Attitude Era. So that was my
we're like the same age.
So I'm 32. You're a little older than I am.
A little older, yeah.
But that was the era that I grew up watching because my friends watched it a lot. So like, you know, we would play the video games and I would watch them while they were watching stuff because we would play Yu-Gi-Oh while they were watching. So that was a lot of my exposure where that's concerned. So this is a very surreal thing for me in general. But one thing that I did find, aside from the fact that we are both working on a game, is we both seem to like a lot of games from the same sort of era, too, which is...
I think if we love video games, we're going to just have crossovers all over the map, you know?
That's usually where things end up going. So I want to ask a few questions first to you. What was probably your first video game that you can remember playing?
Oh, first one, earliest one.
Oh, yeah, earliest one.
So I have... I started with the original Nintendo Entertainment System, the block. So I mean Mario Brothers, but the Mario Brothers copy that I have, it's a 3-in-1. It's Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, and Track and Field. Are you familiar with these?
I am familiar with it. So my friend Miguel, when I was growing up, had the Mario Brothers Duck Hunt dual cartridge.
Okay, the dual was the other one. So the one I had like the bonus Track and Field, and it came with this mat that you throw down on the floor. It had red buttons on it.
Oh, the one that you had to like stomp back and forth on real quick to get it to work.
Yeah, you look like it was like archaic version of DDR.
Yeah,
it's just the buttons on the ground, and you're like jamming them. And there were hurdles and stuff in that game. Yeah, I remember playing it a bunch.
I remember hearing stories between that and the DDR pad of like second story apartment goers and just complaints from neighbors all the time. Like the worst thing ever.
Yeah. Sounds awful. Can't imagine. And you would know, like, if you knew like what level they were playing, you'd know based on like the rhythm what they were doing.
Well, yeah, because wasn't there like bits where you had to hit both buttons at the same time for jumping over hurdles and stuff? So you would know that that's what they were doing.
Yeah, it'd be like that.
Yeah, no, so my era, for me, I technically started with a Nintendo 64, but I was too young to know like what a gaming generation was yet. So just a console was a console to me. If I had it, I played it. So I got an N64 and then got a Super Nintendo afterwards. Right. And for me, it was just like, well, the Super Nintendo has the cool 2D games, and the N64 has the cool 3D games. That's the difference.
They were releasing games at the same time. You know, they still had Super Nintendo had a lot of crossover with the N64 as far as like releases right at the end there.
Yeah, Mario RPG came out really, really late into the SNES's life cycle because it needed the Super FX chip in order to function. Because that game was too big, and the SNES was not really good at handling that many sprites in isometric all the time because they're all pre-rendered. And I don't remember exactly when the first Star Fox came out, but I know that also used the FX chip.
That was earlier, but that was the one I remember that had the logo on the cartridge, Super FX.
Yep,
I'm like 10. I'm like, what's that supposed to be? Like, oh, cool, it has it. Great, must be amazing.
Yeah, it's got to be a cool game. It uses Super FX.
Yeah, you know, did you have the expansion pack for the N64?
So I had to get the expansion pack because one of the games I rented from Blockbuster all the time was Majora's Mask. Mm-hmm. As an adult, I realized I don't really like that game all that much, and I kind of hate myself for it because I know it's a masterpiece. I just can't bring myself to enjoy it, which is weird.
What about it? All right, so was it just the time system, the timing system that you didn't like?
The time system was one thing. I think it was also the fact that my brain is very task completion oriented. So, like for me, unironically, when I get up in the morning, I have to make a list for myself of these are the things that get done before my 24 hours are up in the day. And if I can't get through that list, then I feel like the day was incorrect, or I planned it wrong, either one. So. Okay. For Majora's Mask, the fact that you can complete a quest and you can get the rewards for the quest, usually a heart piece, right? And then when you go back in time, the quest is technically not completed anymore. I think that does something to my brain. The feeling of I have completed these things doesn't work.
There's a lot, but that's part of the game is that stuff would reset. And then there were permanent tasks. Like you even had there was a journal in that game, from what I remember, with all the masks.
the bomber's journal.
The bomber's journal, and you had to go back to certain days and repeat the tasks, and then the endings would be different.
Yep,
there was some really crazy long-term storytelling in that game.
Oh yeah, and because I know if you go to the Lon Lon Ranch counterpart. That's in there. If you save the milk run, every now and again you can get a special thank you from the girl at the ranch, where she gives Link a really big hug, which doesn't happen in all of the endings. There's a lot of neat stuff in the game, and again, the thing with me and Majora's Mask is I recognize it's a masterpiece, and I don't dislike the game when I'm sitting down and playing it. But whenever I think about sitting down and completing that game, there's a billion walls that come up in my brain where I'm like, no, you're not doing that today.
It's on the list, but you'll get to it eventually, kind of thing.
And I've tried a few times. So as a kid, I never even got to the first dungeon because the game is not as straightforward as Ocarina of Time.
It's a hard game. If you don't know it, it's a hard game. You need the guide, I think, for that one.
Oh yeah, and I didn't have that, and I didn't have access to the internet when I was that age either. So I had no real feasible way to get through that game. I knew the things that were in that game because back then the little booklets that would come with our games actually had a whole bunch of items that you'd see later, and that got me salivating for oh my god, there's this different sword in this game that isn't in Ocarina of Time. I want to get it, but I never got that far. Unknown Ego, Panda, and Chaos Kitty, thank you both for following, by the way. And it's the same thing with there's other games that I have that problem too, where I recognize that a game is really good, and I recognize that it's a masterpiece at what it's doing, but I just can't push myself through it to play it. It's God of War is like that for me.
It's so good. Oh my god, it's so good. The new one, right? You're talking about?
Well, the first trilogy. So I started.
The first trilogy to me was too clunky.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't. I don't know. It just, to me, it didn't flow as well as I had hoped. And I think I just wasn't as interested in, the storytelling at that time. But now, if I go back and play it, it's great. But I'm in love with the two games that have come out since then.
The dad and son God of Wars.
Everything about those games, I am all for. The criticism I would see for that is that it's a lot of repetitive combat, and it can get very clunky or very very grindy. I think is what.
Yeah, the formula for the first few God of Wars is put yourself in a room. There's going to be 30 enemies that spawn in the room sequentially. Get rid of the enemies to go forward. Now you're in another room. 30 enemies will come up. Get rid of the enemies to go forward. It's. I recognize that it's a good game. I recognize that it's a good game, but games that have that formula, there's only one game that has that formula that I've really enjoyed, and that's No More Heroes, I think.
Oh, they're fantastic. They're beautiful.
All
of his games. Suda51 is my favorite game developer. I don't know. Yeah.
That's cool as fuck, because Suda... Yeah. So... the only games from Suda that I've personally played are the No More Heroes series, but I watched my friend play through Killer 7 because he was he played through No More Heroes with me and then became a Suda fan and got a GameCube copy of Killer 7 a couple weeks afterwards.
You unlocked a trove, man.
Oh yeah.
Killer 7 is so trippy. It is so trippy, and it came out I don't know, in the mid 2000s, like right when like Toonami was hitting its stride, and like bringing anime over for a lot of us for the first time.
When that
like,
style was like people were craving more and more of that style of thing.
Yeah, and like he was doing stuff. It was almost like a Quentin Tarantino movie mixed with like Cowboy Bebop and with these wacky, bizarre, violent characters and like weird mental trips and yeah, Killer 7 was awesome. And honestly, like I thought I was gonna hate that game just because it's a shooter on rails.
Yeah,
like I had never really played one outside of an arcade before. So like sitting on a console, I was like, oh man, you can't really move anywhere. But then when you start realizing like the targeting system and how that works, it's actually really fun. But then the characters were great. Just the fact that like the one dude was a luchador for like one of his personalities in that game, named Mask de Smith. Like that hit home for me, because I'm like, oh, cool wrestling. But then you dig into his stuff, like No More Heroes. There's all the wrestling Easter eggs in there. And he used to work on the Fire Pro Wrestling games. It's like kind of how he got his start. So he's a big wrestling fan guy.
Which is why all of the nods for Travis Touchdown with the luchador stuff, it all kind of builds into that. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, a lot of Japanese wrestling stuff that he puts in there. Yeah, there's a game he has though has no wrestling stuff in there. It's called Contact. Came out on the DS.
Oh, I know that one. So I had when I was a kid, my mom got me an R4 cart, one of the ones where you could download games and put them on. And I couldn't find that game in stores, but I knew the name Suda51 because I'd played a lot of No More Heroes 1 and 2. So I got a copy of that game on that cart and tried to play it. It was a very esoteric game. It was very hard for me to actually play for more than like 10-ish minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Because it was very informationally dense and hard to grasp as like a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah, it's a lot. The closest thing I could compare it to is kind of like Earthbound. And like Earthbound was something I didn't get into until I was in college. And I just remember I always remember seeing the case for it at Blockbuster. It had the gigantic
the Starman.
The gigantic box. I was like, man, what is this thing? And
it was so weird that game was like $100 in the US when it came out here. Like, I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people didn't play it, because it was while it was a first party-ish Nintendo game, it was a very weird game that was hard to wrap your head around. Even though like at its base, it's just an RPG with a rolling health mechanic. Like that's all it really is.
Yeah.
But like it's a very, very strange game to pick up and play and try to enjoy. And there's so much weird shit in that game too. Like Gygus is a boy howdy, you didn't want to be fighting Gygus when your parents walked in and like, is that a fetus on the screen? What am I looking at?
There's a lot of psychology in that game. I happened to be studying psychology in college when I started playing it. So for me, it was like...
Oh, it was a very cerebral experience for you.
Yeah, all these fun little Easter eggs. And then like, I think that was when I went back and played the original Psychonauts too. So yeah, it's just a perfect storm of like Freud.
I still need to play Psychonauts. So I have Psychonauts.
So good.
It's so one of those, it's the same friend who got really into Killer 7 was really into Psychonauts. So I watched him play a lot of Psychonauts. But I got really excited when the game came out on PC when they did the port of it, and then I got it, and then I never made time to play it. I think that's the story with a lot of people with like their Steam libraries, is they find something they've been waiting for, and then it sits in their library for like 2 years.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. That's the only reason I have a Steam, is so I can go back and play old games.
Yeah. Yeah,
You have so many sales. Yeah, so many sales.
It's very easy to find something on there that's just like, spend a couple bucks, get this thing that's normally $20, and then 3 years from now when you remember you have it, you'll play through. That's what happened with me with Hat in Time. Because my first console was the N64, like I really liked that old style of collectathon platformer, Banjo-Kazooie, Mario 64, Spyro, stuff like that. So Hat in Time, I knew it was that, but I still couldn't find time to play it. And then finally, like, I made a decision to stop playing a lot of my online games, the ones that, you know, last forever and have a battle pass and all the other microtransaction-y bullcrap that's in modern gaming now. I made a resolution to stop playing those all the time and start actually eating through my backlog. And Hat in Time just made me feel like a kid again the entire way through. It was wonderful.
Awesome.
But you said your first console was the original Nintendo.
Yeah, I got it right here behind me.
I wish I still had my original N64. Mine suffered a lot of wear and tear as a kid, and then there was
rage quit? Did you get in your fights for Mario Kart?
I never rage quit Mario Kart. I think the only game that ever made me rage quit, and it wasn't on the N64, it was the original Mortal Kombat, the port that was on the Super Nintendo. If you're a kid and you are getting to the late stages of that game, when you're about to fight Shang Tsung and Goro, I am surprised that my controller survived childhood me.
So many broken joysticks. Many broken joysticks on that thing.
Oh, well, luckily, I'm talking about the Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat, so no joystick on that. But
oh, no.
I can tell you what broke the joystick for my N64. It was Mario Party. Hands down, it was Mario Party. Just having to do
you gotta do
Yep, doing this thing. No, I could not. So I found out that there's a company now that makes N64 controllers still, and they make better ones than what Nintendo used to make. So instead of plastic joysticks, it has a plastic-based joystick with a rubberized grip, like a normal joystick would be now. And then instead of having the like long thin stick that goes in that has a little metal rod on the inside that the N64 controller had, it's a regular controller port made of really thick plastic. So you can do that over and over and over again for hours, and you're not going to grind the thing to dust. I have a couple original N64 controllers, and then I have those newer ones. And I actually had a few friends over to my house to play Mario Party, literally like I want to say 2 months ago. And the consensus was don't hand me the original controller. Please keep that on the shelf.
You're breaking them already?
They're old controllers, so they're already like drifting a little bit side to side. The plastic's already a bit worn down. Bohemian says, does it use the N64 shape? Absolutely. The only N64 controller I have that doesn't have the original shape is the one I got for Saki, because she didn't grow up with that console, so she's just like, give me a normal controller, please. Give me something that feels normal in my hands.
Yeah.
What would you say your favorite game is, though? Like, if NES is your first gaming console, is your favorite game on there, or is it somewhere else?
No, my favorite all time is Ocarina of Time.
All time's Ocarina of Time?
All time. I think it's like a perfect video game. Absolutely perfect. For a single player game. Absolutely perfect.
I can kind of agree with that. So Ocarina of Time's not my favorite Zelda of that whole series. I think my favorite one is Wind Waker.
Okay.
But,
I love Wind Waker.
But I will say this. Did you play
you can't enjoy Wind Waker to the fullest without having played Ocarina of Time.
To a degree, I agree with you. And I think that's why to a degree. So bear in mind, for me, here's my history with Ocarina of Time. Blockbuster Video. I rented Ocarina of Time from there. I started playing on whoever's save file was on the actual cart. They were at the end of the game in Hyrule Castle Town after the time shift. Okay. So I walked out.
Spoiler.
This is 7-year-old me walking out in Hyrule Castle Town, getting attacked by the Redeads, having no idea what the hell's going on. I take the card out of my N64 and I go, nope. I'm playing something else. I'm playing anything else.
Rated T for teen.
A couple years later, Wind Waker was announced for the GameCube, and my mom, it was the only game my mom ever let me pre-order. I did the pre-order for it, and when you pre-ordered Wind Waker, you got a GameCube copy of Ocarina of Time.
Right, the Master Quest.
Yes, so that was the way I actually experienced Ocarina of Time. So my experience with that game ended up being playing through most of it, and then Wind Waker coming out, playing through and beating Wind Waker, and then going back and finishing Ocarina of Time. So I played enough of Ocarina of Time to have context for the beginning of Wind Waker, when it has the whole, like, this is the story of the hero of time, this is what happened, things went haywire, this is the story of what happened after the gods had to destroy the world. Have fun. The where Ocarina of Time is concerned, I do have to ask a question. Have you played the 3DS version of it?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a statement, which I don't know if you'll agree with, but I think that the N64 version of that game is 100% obsolete because of the 3DS version. If the 3DS version could be played on a TV, legally, I mean, there are ways to do it, but legally could be played on a TV, there would be no reason to go back and play the N64 version outside of, say, nostalgia.
And what's your reasoning for that?
My reason, I have a few reasons for it. One, there is a graphical upgrade for it, which is very, very nice. I have my original copy broke, so I have done an emulated upscale of it before to see like what it actually would look like if you blow it up and give it full anti-aliasing, and it looks really good on a modern TV. It really does. But there's a couple things that I think are better about it. One, obviously, it is a little graphically better. Two, it runs at 30 frames a second instead of 20, so it is a smoother experience for the eyes. It doesn't experience slowdown. It doesn't experience as many technical hiccups. A lot of that comes with just age. But the two big things for me. Number one, the text. You have the ability to make the text go by faster.
Yeah, that's huge.
Which the original one, it is stuck at one speed.
So slow.
And it is so I can't stand the text scroll of the original, especially whenever you encounter the owl and you're like, you get to tutorialize to me for a minute.
The A button. Yeah.
You're jamming the A button, playing you're probably playing something on your Game Boy just to pass the time while jamming the A button.
Did you get all that? And you go, no, oh shoot, and he starts over again.
That's where I learned to jam the B button. The other thing, though, is the implementation of the iron boots. So in the original, the iron boots are a piece of equipment that you have to go into the pause menu to use. And the pause menu in that game has lag, which is really strange, but very annoying. For anybody who's not played the original, if you press the pause button, the game stops for a second and then loads the pause screen, because the pause screen has a bunch of objects in it. And then when you leave the pause screen, it is faster when you leave it. In the 3DS version, instead, the iron boots are turned to an item that you can assign to a button. So you don't, when you're doing like the water temple, you don't have to flit in and out of the pause screen in order to play through it. You get to just flip the item in and out. And that's like, that makes one of the most painful dungeons.
Nice. Yeah.
That makes one of the most painful dungeons of that game far more bearable. And the text crawl is far more bearable. And thankfully, unlike some other remakes that I've played, the art style wasn't changed from the original. So the graphical upgrade doesn't come with like, well, it looks better, but the entire vibe is off.
No, it was still good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice upgrade. I would agree with you in those senses. It's probably a superior version. But the one I played the most is still the OG.
Yeah.
For all its faults and glitches and stuff like that. I mean, it was
the glitches make
that was one of the first.
The glitches make that game though.
N64 game, yeah. Well, for people who are into that stuff, like when I was 7, I wasn't worried about glitches so much. I was, oh cool, a sword.
I think
it's a spider monster.
I think when you're when you're a kid, if you accidentally happen onto one of those glitches, it's like a core memory moment at that point. Like the first time, if you're a kid playing, say, Mario 64 and you discover the backwards long jump just by messing around, like that's going to stick with you for a long time.
Yeah, you feel like you just did something very wrong and very awesome at the same time.
Oh yeah, that's one of the reasons people love like old school Resident Evil and Metroid games. Like when you're playing those games, if you find a way to sequence break, it's like the game opens up entirely.
Or even to a lesser extent, like in the original Doom, in Quake and those games, where they would just have panels of the wall that were identical, but you could somehow open them up like doors.
Yeah, like in the first level
on the map.
Like in the first level in Quake, if you go to the right-hand side, there's two identical like indentations in the wall, but the one on the right-hand side has an armor pack in it. And the one on the left-hand side doesn't open up at all. Yeah. And you get the little prompt like, you discovered a secret area, and you feel a secret area. Yeah. You feel amazing when you do that.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember, I mean, you were probably a little younger, like in Nintendo Power, when they had the previews for Ocarina of Time, there was like a still shot of Link getting the Triforce in that game in a fountain.
I remember seeing that.
It was young Link, yeah.
And yet that moment never actually happens in the game.
No, it was so early in the development. It was something like a test that they were running. But there was all these rumors that you could unlock that and like ways to figure it out and find it. And like I remember looking everywhere for it, and it just wasn't in the game. But hackers were able to go back, or modders, or whoever the hell does it, were able to go back and open up the game files and like find the actual artwork, and they reconstructed it. So then you started, I guess, in the late 2000s, seeing like screenshots of people actually accomplishing this online,
because people that had taken emulated ROMs and patched them, and now they had the stuff in there. The same thing happened with Mario 64 with Luigi, right? Where people would go like, "Does the star on the fountain say L is real? That means Luigi's in the game." And then that one turned out 20 years later.
20 years
later, we found out that actually Luigi was in the source code of the game. After the game was decompiled, we found that, he is in there. He was intended to be implemented into the game. All of that stuff is true. We just don't have the ability to grab it with what's like in the actual game. But the assets are all there for Luigi. And I'm like, that's interesting. Because like for 20 years, the narrative was, no, you actually can't find Luigi, but there's this cool meta-narrative about what it would have been like if you could. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, we decompiled the game, and actually the asset's there, and actually he was in the game the entire time. 20 years of thinking this is a lie, actually, no, it was true the entire time.
Crazy. I remember there was the thing people thought you had to run around the fountain like 120 times for him to appear.
There was all kinds of...
It's weird to think of that game as like a multiplayer game, because that was the purpose that they were thinking about including him, was that you could have two people playing at the same time.
Yeah.
And like, just, I don't know, it was already so far ahead of its time, like when it came out as a single player game. But doing like the split screen co-op and stuff, that would have been wild.
There are some levels in that game though, like Bowser's Submarine in the original version of that game. That level already chugs on original hardware so hard, I would not want to see what happens if you tried to split screen that. Like, yes, let's play 5 FPS Mario 64. I would like, if Nintendo re-released Mario 64 today, though, I would like to see them implement the originally designed multiplayer that they wanted to put in.
Just make a whole new game. Just go crazy.
I mean, so I want the original game, but with updated assets, because there are some stuff in Mario 64 that, like, you can tell that the designers kind of, like, half-assed slapping a level together off of whatever assets they had available. So, like, the second snow level in that game, there's a lot of areas in there that are just, like, they look very unfinished. They look like we just put some polygons in here and we gave it a texture and called it a day. And there's a
snowman in the middle.
Yeah, there's a few areas of the game that are like that, and I would like to see those areas kind of reimagined with, better graphics. Now, we had kind of a chance to do that with the DS version of the game, but man, that game suffers from a lot of problems.
What do you mean?
So the DS version of Mario 64,
you can play as four different characters.
Yeah,
right?
You can play as 4 different characters. So what they did is they changed a lot of the way you get some of the stars to needing certain characters to get them. So instead of organically going into a level and doing it, you go, oh shit, I have to switch to Wario. Oh shit, I have to switch to Luigi. And that's not really super fun, going into a level and going, oh, I have to leave, in a game that was not designed for that. The other thing is the game uses the D-pad for its movement instead of a joystick, which doesn't lend itself very well to how Mario 64 plays. Not really. I played through the whole game on N64 originally, then I played through it again on the DS. And when I was a kid, I was like, oh, this is so much better. The game looks nicer. It didn't really look nicer. It was on a smaller screen, so there was less to mess up. And then I played it again later and realized, oh, this doesn't really control very well. Some of the fun of Mario is how good the controls are, and these just are not working super well for me.
Yeah, clunky with the D-pad. I remember that. The thing was tiny too. That wasn't even like a great D-pad.
No, it was like, luckily it wasn't one of those D-pads that like hurts your finger after you've been using it for a time. I've had some Xbox controllers that have that issue where like a game requires the D-pad and then after an hour you're like, my thumb hurts. Why does my thumb hurt? I'm just playing a video game.
You're all in on joysticks, man.
Yeah, which means that sometimes you get a game like if you've played the Shantae series before.
I played it on PC.
Gotcha. So you'll play a game like that. If you have the wrong controller for that and you're trying to use the D-pad, it kind of hurts.
That would be very frustrating.
The N64 D-pad is also kind of abysmal in that way.
Terrible. Awful.
Yeah.
Total afterthought.
So as a kid, I didn't realize how bad it was because I played like Kirby 64, and Kirby 64 used exclusively the D-pad.
Crystal Shards.
Yes. Right? And it was the only game that I knew that used only the D-pad, right. And it felt fine there. But now when I try playing it, I'm like, this hurts my thumb after a bit.
Yeah.
I did a playthrough of Pokemon on stream, Pokemon Yellow, and I used my N64 controller plugged into the PC for it, and it was a genuinely painful experience.
Oh, sure, I can imagine.
Then we did have a conversation before about Pokemon, about the original generations for it. Mm-hmm. So my partner and I, we are actually doing a playthrough of Yellow together, where we have rival battles at certain levels where we have to fight each other with our link cables.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
And our teams are randomized. We used a set of D20 to randomize our teams before we actually started the game. So, like, right now I'm stuck with a Parasect and an Oddish for my playthrough.
Oh, nice. You can't level them up?
I can level them up and I can evolve them. The problem is, so Parasect has some of the worst stats in the game. And it has the worst move pool in the game. Yeah, I'm unironically coasting on Scratch.
Yeah. So are you getting the boosters? Are you allowed to boost them up, or is that against the rules?
You have to play it completely organically. No boosting.
Raw yellow?
Yep. No boosting, no nothing. And if the Pokemon is at a later stage in the game, no sequence breaking to go get it. You have to just wait until you're allowed to get it. So, like, I have those two Pokemon, and then I have...
Yeah, you're just on an adventure.
Yeah, it's You're
just cruising together.
It's been a little stressful in the beginning because, like, we have the rule, like, you can use your starter up to a certain point because it would literally be impossible if you couldn't. So I got to Mount Moon, got the Paris, and went, oh, cool, now my playthrough's harder. Shit.
Nice. So you guys just get into fights all the time? That's what's going on?
Right now, our rule is, as long as we have the same amount of Pokemon in our party, level 25 is our first battle. We did this with Generation 2 first because we got those carts working first. We went to the Too Many Games convention up in Philadelphia, and I got a copy of Silver there that had a new battery, and she got a copy of Crystal that had a new battery.
It cost you $1 million.
She got lucky and got the copy of Crystal for about 100, and I got the copy of Silver for about 55, which those
went up so high.
It's insane. I think COVID affected it mostly. Like, the entire retro gaming market got thrown through a loop when COVID hit, and I don't even know why it went through a loop when COVID hit. I just know that that's when it got really bad.
Yeah. Everyone was sitting inside playing games, like
yeah,
it's just a thing. Like collecting. I don't know. I don't think I even got serious with like looking for older retro games and stuff until 2020. Probably when I started twitching too at the same time. That was directly related to COVID. Like, I'd be on here every day just playing different games with people in my my stream and everything.
Trying to find a way to pass time.
It was awesome though, because I'd play stuff that I forgot I haven't played before, so I'd have like retro game. I'd have Throwback Thursdays. We do like Parappa the Rappa, and like scary ass Sundays. I'd have the heart monitor on and playing Blair Witch stuff I would never like just play on my own.
Was that a Wii release?
Blair Witch was, I believe, Xbox. What was before the Series X? The One, Xbox One, and PS4. PS4.
Okay.
It's by the Bloober team, who did what was the other game that they did that was amazing? Cyberpunk game with Rutger Hauer in it.
Okay. The only heart monitor I could think of was the one that attached to your finger for the Wii, that they used for like I think a grand total of 2 horror games ever.
Here. I don't have it on me. No, I had like a heart rate monitor that you'd wrap around my chest, and then I could link up like a little heart animation, and I made it like a Doom graphic, so it looked like the Doom screen where like the heart would beat. Yeah, but that thing speeds up with your heart rate when you're playing.
Damn, that's actually really cool.
So it was super fun. Wednesdays we do adventure games, so like I played Uncharted for the first time. That was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, good times, man. Don't miss the pandemic, but do miss doing the Twitch every day.
There's I will say this is maybe a side effect of growing up in Florida, but my brain has this weird positive negative association with like all the infrastructure goes down and suddenly things are more fun. So I grew up and had Hurricane Ivan rip through Pensacola, right? So Pensacola had no power, like the entire city had no power for about 3 weeks. And there were even conversations over whether the city would be rebuilt. Eventually, it got rebuilt because the U.S. military just went, we have bases here. Rebuild. And then like the Naval Air Station is there. But I remember like when that happened, when there was no electronics, nothing available, me and a bunch of kids in the neighborhood, the only thing we had that we could do to entertain ourselves was play Yu-Gi-Oh! So we would just go outside and play Yu-Gi-Oh! On like a fallen tree. And that was just what we would do until our parents said, hey, it's time to take out the chainsaws and clean up the yard. Because that's what everybody had to do at that point. Everything was broken. COVID, kind of similar. I did a fundraising stream shortly after COVID like came in full swing. And I think I was just like mainly playing Diablo 3 during it, but just kind of hopping on and going, well, we're all stuck inside, so let's all hang out together online for however long we have to. Like there was some fun to it. I don't miss it in general. Like obviously like missing when things are really bad would be almost psychotic, but there are some aspects to it that I'm like, man, that part was kind of fun. That part was kind of neat. I think it's having grown up with like hurricanes and shit where I'm just like, here's the silver lining behind the tragedy. Yeah. This is what I've got to focus on.
That was we would long for like snow days. That was our thing. Mm-hmm. Like in Philly. Like, yeah, that blizzard of 96 was cool because we had like 3 feet of snow and we were off of school for a week. So it was just video games and TV and warm food, you know?
It's like everything's technically bad, but there's the thing.
But there's no more snow days anymore, so it's fine. There's snow doesn't exist in the original context in the northeast section of Philadelphia anymore. So no kids will not know the pleasures of getting up early and turning on the news and seeing if your school was closed.
Yeah, I'd never experienced a snow day in Florida. Because I only ever experienced snow once in Florida, and it was like the tiny bit of flakes coming down where I was like, oh my god, this is so cool and unique. And then I moved to Georgia and suddenly, once every few years the snow just turns off all infrastructure. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Why not?
Yep, just a little bit of snow will get you guys there.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize why that was, because I'd see the memes like making fun of Atlanta, going, hey, you guys get an inch of snow and everything shuts down, and then I realized, we didn't even have a budget for like salt trucks for the longest time. We didn't have the infrastructure to fight snow. Like, yeah, that's why. Okay, that makes sense. You can still make fun of Atlanta though, it's fine.
No, Atlanta's great. Great town, good barbecue.
There's a new food truck area.
Amazing aquarium. What were you saying? There's a food truck?
There's a food truck area that just opened up recently in Atlanta that I want to go visit with my partner, because I adore food trucks. I like if I can go somewhere and there's a bunch of just street food that's not stuff that I'd find just sitting down in a restaurant, or like, God forbid, some chains, then that's like my mecca. I don't know why that is, but that's some of my favorite kind of food.
Like, you just like the options?
I think it's the options thing. I think it's also just the change of environment. So like with a restaurant, it's fun when you're sitting down there,
man.
Like you're locked in, you're there for a couple hours sometimes. It's fine. I think with food trucks though, for me, it's the feeling of like, I can get up and go whenever I want. There's a ton of options around me, and there's this unique environment that is constantly changing with all kinds of interesting things around me that you're not going to find in the restaurant.
Yeah, I love them too. The parks are really cool.
Yeah, I think that the best place I've been to for food trucks though has been Portland, Oregon. I've never been anywhere that has more or better food trucks.
That makes so much sense. I was there. I haven't done any the food truck stuff. I didn't have a lot of time. We did donuts when we were there. That was about it. Fair. But the vibe in that city, yeah, screams food truck.
Oh yeah, there's an area, I forget where it is, but we found it the last time I was in Portland for the retro game show there. There was a place there that had just lines and lines. I think it was like 72 food trucks in it, and then like a bunch of picnic tables in the middle.
Like a car show, but they were all serving grilled cheese.
Basically, yeah. It was basically that. Like I got there and I'm just like, oh my god, this is amazing. This is everything I've ever wanted. And then on the downside of that though is that when you're in a small group, that's perfect. That's amazing. The problem is that when I go to a convention, I'm almost always there with a whole bunch of other YouTuber friends. So like once you get the group to a certain size, nobody wants to go to a food truck area. They're just like, it's 11 at night. I want to go sit down at a restaurant, so then everybody will go to like an Indian place or a Chinese place, and that's where we'll be after we're done at the con, which is still fine. Like I like being in restaurants, but I really prefer, if I can help it, just the different environments. Portland, Oregon says, I hear I was summoned and visited. Every single time. I don't understand who runs the Portland, Oregon YouTube account, but it's just pop into my chat randomly. Jesus. That said, hold on. Dr. Nuclear Winter says, so if I want to write a heel promo, I make fun of the local food. The issue I found with Denver is that they have no local food and no food at all after 6 p.m. It's not a city. It's a retirement home on a hill.
Sounds like a heel promo to me. Right
Jesus
there.
Christ.
Just call them out on their lack of personality, I guess.
Yeah, like there is something to be said about
personality of mountain.
There's something to be said about just writing a character who has no appeal to speak of to begin with, and that seems to be what angle Dr. Nuclear Winter needs to be working on there.
Everyone just hating on Denver right now.
Hey, at least it's not where I am in Georgia, where I think there's only one local food place here, and everything else is some kind of chain. All of it is some kind of chain.
Close to Macon?
Little bit. Don't want to give away the specific location for obvious reasons, but
yeah, find you.
What's up?
We'll come find you.
I actually had one stalker once already, who started going card shop to card shop, asking not for my real name but for my online name. And so I got a message from one of my my friends at the shops like, hey, there was somebody looking for you at the shop today. I was like, oh, that's fine. And they were like, no. They were looking for a Cirrus, and they weren't somebody from any of our groups. I'm like, oh, that's far more terrifying. That's far different. What's up?
Did you ever find out what they wanted?
Yes. So what I found out is one of my friends who watched a pod. I used to be part of a Sonic the Hedgehog podcast called Sunset City, where we would just talk about old school Sonic stuff, anything new that was coming out, any news like Sonic Frontiers.
Amazing cartoon series from the early 90s.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was a very, very dark children's cartoon.
There were two. One
Yes.
was great, one was not. One was great, or one was bright, one was dark. Yeah.
Yep. The one was effectively a Tom and Jerry ripoff, and then the other one was good.
The most serious cartoon of all time with Sonic the Hedgehog.
I actually have. They did a DVD release of that recently,
It's so good.
and I have that on DVD, and I'm trying to get my partner, who doesn't give a shit about Sonic, I'm trying to get her to sit down and watch the show with me. It's a bit of a
emotionally invested as Sonic saves Sally and the creatures of the woods.
My what I've been trying to do is, like, every now and again I'll go, hey hun,
I totally didn't watch that a million times. It's cool.
Look, my favorite episode of that entire show is the time travel one, where they find out how Julius Robotnik became Emperor Robotnik.
Oh, right.
Where they go back in time. Like, that was my favorite one, because I love the environment of that show, and I love the dark implications of that. It was a good show. I've only seen it all the way through once, but that episode
ending, right?
It has a cliffhanger ending, but there are two caveats to that ending. One, the show did get continued in the comics. So yeah, the Archie comics ended up continuing that, like, ended up killing off Robotnik after a while, and then bringing him back like 3 years later. Like, the comics did a whole lot of weird stuff, but
I thought I thought the TV show got rid of him, though.
So the TV show got rid of him so that Snively could take over as the villain.
Right, like, come on, like, I'm gonna believe Snively's the big bad guy now, going, like, he's such a loser.
But when you look behind Snively, Ignis Magus is behind him.
There's eyes, yeah.
And they showed Ignis in one other scene when Sonic goes to the dimension that Sally's dad was trapped in.
Okay.
And you see Ignis is trapped in that world too, where his magic doesn't work. So Ignis ended up becoming one of the big bads in the comic book as well.
Okay.
And I forget how they showed Robotnik dying in the comics, but what they ended up doing in the comics was, after Robotnik died and a whole bunch of other B-list villains came in and tried to fill in that power vacuum, after a few years, there's an Elseworlds comic that happened with Sonic where he went to a timeline where Robotnik won and turned himself into, like, a digital mainframe version of himself. They bring that Robotnik back, and they found that, like, he scanned the multiverse, found the world where Robotnik lost, and then found a way to travel to that multiverse, uploaded himself into a robot body, and then did the whole, like, Joker and Batman thing. You see, I had no purpose without you, and you have no purpose without me, kind of deal, and then became the established villain again for a while. And then there was another weird arc where they brought the original Robotnik back to have an argument with that Robotnik. It gets weird. It went
on this long? How long was this comic book run?
It went on for over 290 issues. Yes.
That's like longer than the show.
Yes. It was the longest running video game adaptation comic book of all time.
Oh my god.
The only reason the comic ended up ending was because there was a legal battle between one of the comics artists and and Sega themselves.
Okay.
Where that artist tried to claim a bunch of different characters were his, and Sega tried to go, that's not the agreement.
Yeah.
The agreement is these are our characters, you just write them.
Right.
And they said,
which is probably true.
Then they tried to bring him to court, and they needed the publisher of the Archie comics, Archie themselves, they needed them to bring his contract in to show that, no, this is where you see that you get paid to write the characters, not create them. Even when you create a character, they are part of Sega Enterprises. They lost his paperwork. So now those characters he does legally get to use.
Yeah.
And they had to do a reboot where they annihilated those characters out of existence for legal reasons. And then eventually they put a bunch of mandates on Archie for Sonic. And then eventually they took the rights away from Archie to Sonic and gave it to IDW and restarted the series. And now there's a new Sonic series over IDW with one of the writers who worked for Archie, Ian Flynn, ended up going on to work at IDW and working on the comics. And then he became one of the writers for the new Sonic Frontiers game. So
wow.
They've had a whole glow up for some of that staff.
Yeah, for sure.
All things
Frontiers
considered.
is really wild. That's
Yeah,
that game's kind of all over the place.
it is. I think that it's one of my favorite Sonic games to think about.
Mhm.
But it might not be one of my favorite ones to play.
Play, right? Like the play doesn't match kind of what the ambition is for the game.
Yeah, there's the latest update for the game did fix a lot of my original gripes with the game. The controls. So they added in a secondary ending. So did you play through the game before?
I got through 2/3 of it.
Okay, so I don't want to spoil unless you're okay with me spoiling the ending of the game.
Nah, don't spoil it. Dude,
Okay.
give me the spoiler free.
Fair. So the way the game works in the original form, you go through, that first island, you go through the second desert island, and then you get to Chaos Island, which is the volcano island. After that, there's a fourth island that's you get to do in with like 20 seconds or so. Like it's very, very quick. It's a very challenging island, but it's very quick. And then the final island, by the time you get there, you have enough stuff saved up that you can skip it, basically. You can skip everything that's on the island if you want, and then you go to the final boss fight, and an ending happens there that people didn't feel great about. The actual boss you want to fight is literally locked to the hard mode of the game. It's not in the regular version of the game, and the boss itself makes you play Ikaruga instead of Sonic the Hedgehog to fight it. So it changes up the way that the boss fight works entirely only for the boss, and then has a very like ham-fisted ending at the end with a cliffhanger. The latest update changed two major things. One, it redid the final area entirely. Instead of you can choose to go through the original final area or the new one. In the new final area, instead of playing through with Sonic in an area that you can basically skip by using whatever you collected, up to that point, instead, you have to go through a separate story where you play through as Knuckles, Tails, and Amy.
Oh, that's cool.
And so you get to play with their, Tails gets to use his mech from Sonic Adventure 2.
Nice.
Knuckles is the worst of all of them. I don't know how they messed up Knuckles, but they messed up Knuckles. But Amy feels fun to play. Tails feels fun to play. Knuckles is
hammer
there.
this one?
She doesn't get her hammer. It's weird.
No hammer?
They instead give her the tarot cards from Sonic CD, which is fine, but it's not the same as having her hammer. Yeah, I want the hammer the way we got to play her in Sonic Advance.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Amy that I want, but we didn't get that Amy.
That's a great game.
Tails at least we got perfect. Being able to play as Tails outside of the mech and then summon the mech at will and then use the mech. That is my perfect Tails. But after you go through all of those parts of the story, you go through Sonic's part of the final island, and then you get a different final boss. It's the same one, but the final battle's a proper supersonic fight instead of the Ikaruga one, and it has a whole bunch of references to Fist of the North Star and shit in it. It is a wild second version of the fight, and it has a team up between Sonic and Eggman. Technically, the original story has that too. Every Sonic story where the villain isn't directly Eggman, there's a team up between the two of them at some point. So it is a better experience than the original version of the island, but it's not the thing that I care about the most. The thing I care about the most is they fixed the controls. Right. The controls for the original game were fine, but your momentum would stop when you jumped, which was really strange. Yeah. You have a toggle in the new version where you can just turn that off. Mm-hmm. And you can keep your momentum. So you can just run fast and then launch yourself into the fucking stratosphere.
Yeah.
Which should have been in the original version.
More fun to play that way. Sure.
That's how Sonic games have always played originally. You just get up momentum and then go super fast. And then jump into the air. And now you're suddenly, breaking Mach 2 in the atmosphere. Though I do want to pivot a little bit from games that we enjoy right now to the game that we actually have done a little bit of work on. So both you and I are working on, or not working on, we both voiced in Overton, which should be out later this month. If fingers are crossed, Hope everything goes well, though obviously, and I say this with Dr. Nuclear Winter in the chat, no game was better because of crunch. So, be kind to yourself. Anyway, that said, do you want to go ahead and talk about how you got involved with doing stuff with the city of Overton and maybe the character that you play?
I mean, Overton kind of fell into my lap. Dr. Nuclear Winter reached out to me and basically said, hey, I have this video game I'm working on, and you can say no if you want, but there's a character that's kind of inspired by you. And I'm like, okay, this sounds cool. And then I saw a lot of the visual style of the game, and I was hooked immediately because it was so different than what else is out there. I've never seen anything done like
the 3D printed craft style.
Never seen anything done like. The closest thing I could think of is like maybe stuff that was like maybe claymation, you know, or stop motion.
Yeah.
And that just sounded so appealing to me. And then, you know, I heard about there's a little bit of wrestling lingo in this game, and, you know, storytelling themes that kind of line up with what, you know, I'm used to doing. And then, you know, the fact that they had some character in here who was, you know, a tribute to me and like the characters that I've created for television, was awesome. And I basically, you know, told them a little bit about what I did at 2K for the WWE 2K video games, and you know, I'm very interested in behind the scenes work, and yeah, they asked me to voice a character in this video game, and it's a fun atypical professional wrestler type character that I got to play. And yeah, it was a good experience getting to voice it, and I'm really excited to see how the whole project comes together.
You want to talk about the character that you are voicing, Cece, for a minute?
I don't think there's much more to say. You know, I don't want to give away everything, but like, Cece is your typical pro wrestler. It's what you, if you close your eyes and you imagine professional wrestler as like a cartoon character, you will get some version of what Cece is. My actual reference when trying to figure out who this character was on my end was there was a character on a Dexter's Laboratory spinoff. Gendy Tartakovsky is the animator for that show.
Yeah.
Did Samurai Jack and a few other.
I love Gendy's work.
Original, yeah, Gendy. But they did a character called Monkey on that show, who was like a super powered monkey.
Like the one, the black latex suit with the golden M
with an M, right?
Yes.
So there was always superhero parodies on this side cartoon. There was Monkey, then there was like the Justice Friends, who were like the Justice League.
Yeah, with the Infraggable Crunk, the Captain Major America Glory, ripoff,
Major Glory. Yeah. So there's an episode of Monkey that features the Justice Friends, where there's this intergalactic wrestler, you know, who destroys.
Oh, I remember the one that's voiced by
Oh yeah,
Savage. Yeah, why is my brain blanking on the
Macho Man?
Yeah, Randy Savage.
Macho Man Randy Savage. Yeah. So that character on that show is like, just be Macho Man Randy Savage is already the most pro wrestler you could think of, but then it turns it up a notch even more because it's so like kind of generic, you know? So he has to just kind of be like,
you get to be the satire.
Yeah.
You get to 100% lean into the satire.
That very specific performance from Macho Man on a Dexter's Lab cartoon is what I was envisioning when I channeled Cece for this game.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't go full Macho Man voice. We found like a different voice for it. I don't know if I can just call back to it immediately, but I will try my best if we're going to reenact it.
Fair enough.
But that's the best description I can give you. Yeah, the most wrestling wrestler ever.
I wanted, so my original want for this part of stuff was to do some of the interactions that our characters have in the game. The problem that I found, this is new information for people on the stream, not new because me and Drew talked about this before the stream. The problem is our characters only interact like once, because most of CC's interactions are with a different character who's far more connected to CC than mine, which I don't want to spoil the reasons why that is the case, but it makes perfect sense if you see all the different angles the game ends up going into.
You'll find out.
Yeah, you'll find out. I will say this. I get to voice the main character, but I don't get to voice the most interesting character. So that is for y'all to figure out as you play the game, which again should come out this month. But again, once more, for Dr. Nuclear Winter, please do not push yourself so hard that you are not able to actually function. That would be a good thing. Dr. Nuclear Winter says, think Pittsburgh to get the voice again.
Yeah, I'm already in that mode.
You're already in there.
Usually there's a whole warm-up routine that I get coached through to get into this, so just want to warn you ahead of time.
Entirely fine. So do you have chapter 5 of There Is No Arizona Pull-Up? Ghost chapter. So you and I, the only area that I could find that we interact in for any like amount of time is on line 29 in here, and that's it. So for context for everybody in the chat, there is a restaurant called Ghost Dogs in the game. I don't want to spoil anything besides that, but there is a restaurant called Ghost Dogs, and that is where a lot of this stuff, actually a lot of scenes in the game take place there, all things considered, when I think back to all the voicing sessions. Or maybe it's just my character's always around Ghost Dogs. Probably says something about my character. Let me see if there's anything else in the chat I need to worry with first. Oh, Nabi the Neko, thank you very much for the hydrate. I will get on that right now.
Hydrate.
Hydration is important. I have a 40-ounce thermos here filled with purified ice water.
Nice.
All right, so on... God, this would work really well if we had the voice actress for Lady Gulak here, too, because we need the other characters for this to work.
Yeah, we gotta do this whole scene.
But...
Can't page in Dr. Nuclear Winter real quick and have them do it?
I guess we could go ahead and bring them in. Let's see here. Dr. Nuclear Winter says, it is the smallest used... Ghost Dogs is the smallest used location, but because of the economy in the town, it is the most discussed. Fair. Said Tina is here? Oh, okay. Do we want to go ahead and get them in on a call as well, so we can go do the whole scene?
Go for it, man. Yeah, let's get the real deal.
All right, and let me go ahead and go here. Nuclear Winter, could you do me a favor and make us a group chat real quick with everybody in it, and then I can just call us into that chat. Said 1 second, need to build my setup. Gotcha. Then we shall wait for a moment while you build the setup so we can go through this, and we will do that. But in the meantime, I guess I'll talk about my character a little bit. But unfortunately, like how yours is the generic, I am a pro wrestler. Imagine what you think I am. Mine is the generic would-be protagonist, but not anime protagonist. Not, oh my god, guys, let's talk about the power of friendship. Like not that. More of the why the fuck am I here? It's Tuesday. This isn't the day that I'm supposed to be here, but I guess I'm here now.
Yeah.
Can I leave?
Adventure time.
Can I leave now, please? That's what I would like to do. I'd like to leave. For my part, there's 2 characters I'm voicing technically, because there's a point in time where my character splits off into a second one named T. So there was one scene I got to do where I got to voice both of them talking to each other, and that was very, very fun. I remember during the session, I was asked, like, hey, do you want to do one run as Tim and one run as T? And I'm like, no, I want to flip between the voices back and forth. That's going to be way more fun for me.
Mm-hmm. Talking to yourself.
Basically. Well, they have very different voices, so I actually got to enjoy that a decent bit. I'm trying to get into more voice acting work besides just the game.
Yeah.
Voice acting on the game has been really, really fun, but there's other projects I want to do as well. So I've most of my vocal coaching, though, has been singing, but luckily most of that actually has a lot of cross-pollination with regular voice acting work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I actually got to have a fun time on Saturdays. And again, this is literally all filler while we wait for Dr. Nuclear Winter. But on Saturdays, me and all of my friends, we go to the local card shop, play Magic the Gathering until about 10:30 at night when the card shop closes. Afterwards, we get everybody from the shop to go to Taco Mac. And so we end up having a 20 or 24 person table at Taco Mac till about 2 in the morning afterwards. And our waiter, we always get the same waiter, and he also plays Magic. So it ends up being just this perfect experience every Saturday.
That's awesome.
One of the guys at the shop is very, very soft-spoken. So you can imagine you're in the middle of a sports bar, there's a 24-person table, and you're not directly next to somebody. You're not able to hear them very well. And he was trying to talk to me, and I'm trying to explain, like, I need you to speak up. I can't hear you. And then he goes, I can't do that. And I just went, okay, cool. Yawn. He's like, what? Like, yawn. Just, I want you to yawn for me right now. Okay? Okay, now hold that shape in your throat. Now say something. And he just, like, he says something and then just, like, stops when he realizes, oh shit, my voice can resonate.
Yeah, stretch his larynx out.
And I'm just, my friend Biminem, who was right next to me, he just kind of looked at me and he's like, did you just give a free voice lesson? And I'm like,
yeah, $40, please. Thank you.
And I'm like, technically, yes. I don't know enough to give lessons, but I remember enough from mine.
Yeah, she had me doing tongue twisters and breathing exercises and tapping my sternum and collarbone and stuff and massaging my face. I was like, man, am I always this tense? I guess I am. You know, at the end I'm just like, ugh.
Oh yeah, it's
ready to talk in a funny voice. Here we go.
I remember during the sessions, by about the third hour, I was always very physically exhausted by the end of the recording sessions. Luckily, I did do all of my singing lessons like a year before doing this, so I had kind of that background knowledge of like, this is the shape I need to have my voice in, this is how I make things resonate. E's sound the weirdest out of every single vowel you possibly can say, but that's fine.
Yeah, I guess I never thought about that. Why does an E sound more weird than an A?
I never thought about it either until I had my
you know what, it's just more strain.
Yeah. I never thought about it until my vocal instructor would go, you're singing every vowel, but you're not singing your E's. I'm like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, you're not singing them. You're just straining when you say it. It's the hardest vowel to do. So we're going to do this over and over. Jeez. I wish I could continue affording those lessons, but at the same time, I at least have the residual experience from it right now.
So that's stuff that you can take with you forever, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You're never going to be able to unhear a conversation and be like, oh, those E's are pinched, you know?
No, I won't. I think that's that way with like anytime you develop a skill.
Yep.
When you see
I can't watch a wrestling match.
You just critique it the entire time.
It's not even that the critiquing part, like those are just autopilot for me now. Like the critiquing, I tell people who ask me this they're like, what do you look for when you watch wrestling? I just watch the audience at this point. I just see what they actually like react to.
Yeah.
Like I'm just straight past what's in ring and stuff. Like those critiques, I can just feel them at this point.
Oh yeah. Because you're like, if I was on the stage, I would be caring about how my performance is reflecting to them. That's what I would be caring about. So that's what I'm watching for now.
Yeah, pretty much.
That makes perfect sense.
You know, and like every audience is different, so you have to kind of be a good judge of character on that sense, and you gotta get a feel for that too. Like the really good wrestlers can, you know, determine based on like how the audience sounds if there's, you know, a certain type of person sitting in the crowd, because the tone will be different of the.
You have to read the room. You have to read that audience.
Literally.
Like if you see that there's, you know, a whole bunch of older people there's a different type of style that they're going to be appealed to. Sure. You see a bunch of teenagers out there's a different style that they're going to want. No, that makes sense. I've done a little bit of public speaking from just, you do YouTube enough and somebody goes, hey, can you speak at this conference? Like it just happens after a certain point. So like I don't have that skill tuned in because I haven't had the opportunity to do it a lot, but the times that I've done it, that has been one of the things I've tried to look for a lot. It's like, hey, who is responding to what when I'm saying?
Yeah. Will these people get these Pokemon references or not?
Some of that is that, or it's like will these people care about a lot of references to Magic the Gathering? No? Okay. Real quick editor's note here. Just wanted to go ahead and let you know that part 2 of this video is going to be live here in a day or so, and part 2 is going to be where we actually do the voice line section of things. I felt it would be better to split them up into 2. That way both would be a little more watchable than, say, the one big combined one. But if you want to watch the one big combined bit along with everything else that happened on that stream, then go check out Nekosaurus Live, where I've got the full VOD there. Anyway, that said, let's go to the credits. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Mark Anthony, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that. Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fire Shard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.